Look at Eric, man, back with another Madden 21 video. Today we finally got playbook information. We got a lot of gameplay information as well today. Some things that were changed, some adaptive AI talk. Kind of interesting for some of you guys out there. So we're going to get into that in just a minute. But if you are new here and you want to stay up to date on all of the latest Madden 21 news, we got a lot of gameplay coming very soon. We got rating stuff for the rest of the week. Make sure you subscribe, turn the bell icon on so that you don't miss any of those uploads. We just hit 279K yesterday. You guys have been just killing it. I appreciate all of you. And I see the inspirational comments. I see that y'all are big Flight Reacts fans with the inspirational comments, the legend comments. You know, I'm a big Flight fan myself. I've been watching Flight for many years, way before he blew up like he did this year. I just didn't have the cameras on back then, but you gotta take my word for it. Trust me, I'm not a casual, okay? So if you like Flight and you like me, hey, I think that's great. Keep up the inspirational comments. Now let's get into today's video. Okay, so there's a lot to cover. I'm going to try to do it as quick as possible. Going to read off of EA's site here and give my opinions as well. So they talk about there's a lot of stuff being changed with the AI controlled teams in terms of adaptive AI, QBs being smarter, run defense being better, and things like that. There's also a lot going on with Playbook. So we're going to cover Playbooks first and then get into the AI and the gameplay changes that they made. So NFL Live Playbooks 2.0, it says, we introduced NFL Live Playbook featured post-launch in Madden 20, which are based on the schemes we see NFL teams execute during the real-life season. During the 2019 NFL season, we were able to update team playbooks with new content, whereas in previous years, they would have had to wait until next year. So they're going to continue doing that this year, it sounds like. It says for Madden 21, we're increasing the amount of content we are delivering via title updates. As the feature evolves, it will increasingly become the way we add new playbook content to the game. We already are in the process of working on a new playbook content that will bring even more variety and authenticity to our playbooks. One example is the Patriots, who just recently signed Cam Newton, and as a result, they incorporated more Patriots plays to the NFL Live Playbook to account for Newton's unique skill set. Now, it says here, offensive playbook updates. While the NFL Live Playbooks will evolve and receive the season-long live updates, we also made a lot of changes to our default team playbooks for Madden 21. The first change you'll notice is that all of the NFL Live Playbook updates from Madden 20 have been added to the default team playbooks where applicable. And just like we've done previously, all teams with a new head coach and coordinator will have playbook content that reflects the schemes of those specific coaches. A contrasting example of this work is reflected when looking at teams like the Panthers and the Cowboys. The Panthers hired a new head coach and overhauled the majority of their coaching staff, so their playbook is quite a bit different since last season, whereas the Cowboys are a bit of an outlier because they do have a new head coach, but they retain the offensive coordinator, and according to the research, Dallas plans on keeping the previous offense in place, so their playbook at launch won't look too different. But once the NFL season starts, if and when they see the Cowboys add new wrinkles to the playbook, then they'll add them via the live playbook updates. And so basically, NFL Live Playbooks at the end of Madden 20, they've taken that, sprinkled a lot of that into the team's default playbooks, and now that's going to be the default playbook going into 21. And then they're going to still have these separate live playbooks, which is now NFL Live Playbooks 2.0, where they're going to update any new things throughout the year. Now, it sounds like at launch here, we're not getting a whole lot of new stuff, because it seems like now they're just more into, okay, we want to just update it 5 times throughout the year because now that's extra content we can bring you guys throughout the year instead of just dumping it all on you in the beginning of the year. I wish they would add more for the launch of the game, but it just seems like this is where EA is going with things now. Here is some of the new stuff you see that they put around, like, some new plays potentially here. Single back bunch ace in the Browns playbook. You have the gun halfback weak in the Bucks playbook, and then you have the gun spray Y slot weak and the Lions playbook. So sounds like they're just kind of going big on updating throughout the year and just kind of making some slight adjustments at the start. Just kind of what I'm gathering. So defensive playbook updates, it says, our main goal for the defensive playbooks was to make them more unique by focusing on including the primary formations that each team uses in real life. This helps ensure that our AI controlled teams are more accurately playing to their strengths of their personnel while making each opponent feel unique. For example, a team may base out of 3-4, but they may not have 3-4 odd in their playbook. Likewise, a team may base out of the 4-3, but they may not have 4-3 normal in their playbook. Users will have more meaningful choices when deciding on a defensive playbook to use this year. Users will also have more formation and play options available for creating a custom defensive playbook. The new offensive and defensive formations and plays that we added to the NFL Live Playbooks post-launch in Madden 20 have been sprinkled around to various regular team playbooks in 21. So this is something I definitely noticed in the beta. There were a lot of 3-4 playbooks that no longer had 3-4 odd, and the same with 4-3, because Basically, in past Maddens, if you were a 3-4 playbook, you had almost all of the 3-4 formations, especially 3-4 odd. But now, teams in real life might be a 3-4 team, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they use 3-4 odd. They might be more of a 3-4 under or an over or something of that nature. So I guess now it sounds like the playbooks are going to more reflect that. Here are some of the new formations. Some of these were added last year. I think some of these could be new this year. Definitely experienced with some of these sugar type sets in the beta. They definitely seem like they could potentially bring decent pressure. But what they did was they took the new formations that they added in 20, and now they've sprinkled them into a lot of default playbooks defensively for 21. And again, you're going to have to be a little bit more picky with your defensive playbook this year, because if you want 3-4 odd, you can't just pick any 3-4 playbook now. It's going to be very specific ones that have it. So that's really most of the stuff they covered for playbooks. Now we're going to get into the gameplay changes that they did. It says here, defensive adjustments to offensive motion. The most fundamental element of playing defense is proper alignment, especially when an offense uses motion or flips the play. When an offense uses motion, it usually results in a change of formation strength, and if the defense is not properly adjusted to the formation strength, it could find itself in a vulnerable position. This was a main contributor to the I-form tight motion strategy being unbalanced in Madden 20. So what they did was they kind of now fixed something with the adjustments the defense makes to player motion. If you keep your auto flip on based on the defensive play call and the type of offensive motion used, the defense will adjust to the change of strength to maintain proper alignment and run fit gap integrity by treating the motion the same as an audible. It says it's going to be done pretty seamlessly, and it shouldn't really like mess you up. This is only if you keep your auto flip on, though. If you turn it off, then you won't get this. But this was a big contributor to the to some of the run game being unbalanced, especially like in I-form tight, like they said, because people would just constantly flip and motion their receiver to try to mess up the alignment and the run gap, the run fit gap, and then they would just not shoot the gaps like they were supposed to because the motion messed it up. So it sounds like now they've kind of put a system in here to automatically help with this if you keep your auto flip on, so that's something to note going into 21. Pass coverage. Another goal to defensive side of the ball is bring more balance to man coverage. We first made improvements to press man and the interaction system. Defenders will use more appropriate press man animations at scale per the matchup of the defender's press rating versus the receiver's release rating. In Madden 20, lower rated defenders were too successful at winning press interactions. Defenders in Madden 21 can now get faked out by certain wide receiver releases. This also allows for more animation content in these situations and will force more separation off the line of scrimmage versus outmatched defensive backs. We also tune man coverage so that receivers with a higher route running rating versus defenders man coverage will have a slightly higher chance of winning on certain route cuts downfield. This is something I definitely noticed in the beta. One thing I thought they did well, at least from what I saw, if you had a lower rated defensive back trying to press an elite receiver like a Mike Evans, and he was on like a fade or a streak, I saw him do that little jab step that you see in real life. Like when elite players, they're trying to press them and they do like that quick little jab step and then they release like really quickly to the other side. And even though the defender's trying to press him, he like almost can't even get a hand on him. It's a clean release because the receiver's footwork is just that good. I saw Mike Evans do that a few times in the beta and it looked clean when it happened. It definitely didn't look like forced or weird. It was one of the few things I thought like, oh wow, this is actually nice. This looks like an improvement. So now if you're trying to press with a lower rated defensive back versus elite receivers, you're definitely going to see some of those new release animations where they just get a clean release and run right past the guy. It's definitely frustrating when it happens, but if you're trying to press an elite receiver, I think that should happen. So, kind of have to worry about your matchups. Put a good defensive back on an elite receiver, or if you don't have one, then don't press him. General play tuning, it says they made subtle improvements to a number of legacy plays for Madden 21 that will encourage players to change up their play calling and execute more plays that you may have avoided in the past. I mean, we'll see how that plays out because that's usually never the case, but it says here that they tuned the speed of many handoff animations so that handoffs are the same speed in either direction. They also changed how block shedding works defensively in relation to handoff speeds. Block sheds will be better timed to match the point at which the ball carrier is out of the handoff animation and deciding which gap to run through. These two changes have made more running plays reliable options in the ground game, while also bringing balance to overused plays such as stretch and dive. Now this sounds good actually, because this has been a huge problem for years in Madden. If you play Madden on any decent level, there's just so many run plays in the game that simply don't work. They just do not work because the handoff is so prolonged, it's so slow, that by the time you get control of your running back, you got a defender in your face almost every time because of the block shed. So what it sounds like they did now was they sped up all of the handoff animations. So now you have runs like counters, misdirections, some of the blast type runs, or or some of the like under center inside zones. Now you can get control of that ball quicker, and they've slowed the block shed so that your guy on defense isn't consistently just block shedding faster than you can get the handoff every time, because that's what would happen, and that's why everybody really stuck to stretch and dive, because they were the only two consistent runs where you actually got the ball to your running back quickly and you could actually make a move. All the other runs, it would be so slow that you would always get block shedded before you could even get control of your running back. So I think that actually does sound good. Curious to see how that plays out. It says they also added more variety in receiver stance animations, which account for the receiver's body type. Along with the new stance, they cleaned up issues with releases into their routes when not being pressed to get them into their routes and downfield faster to improve timing in the passing game. I noticed this in the beta as well. This has been a big complaint of mine and many for years, is receivers just don't run their routes fast. They don't release fast. They don't like run with any sense of urgency. They don't get into their breaks quick. This looked a little bit better in the beta. I still think this needs a good deal of work. Probably a lot of work, but it's noticeably a little bit better. So I will say that the receivers are a little faster into their breaks and out of their releases now. It says halfback slip screen plays have been adjusted in many areas. The first is the halfback getting the cleaner release on his route while avoiding traffic near the line of scrimmage. Also added functionality for screen blockers to sometimes block a rusher and the inside gaps before releasing out for the screen so that the QB has enough time to get the pass off versus heavy pressure. I mentioned this in the beta review. Screens were definitely better. They're still not perfect by any means, but definitely versus a blitz, they're really good now because the halfback does release cleanly. He doesn't get like tripped up over his offensive line, and that's definitely a nice and welcome change. It says in addition to the halfback improvements in the screen game, we added the addition of the halfback choice routes, which will be commonly used in trips formations like gun trade Y flex. These routes get your halfback involved in the passing game and allow him to make AI-driven decisions on the fly, and even halfback swing routes have been tuned so that running back is more aware of the sideline and more responsive going upfield after the catch. Now, I love this. Now, in Madden, especially, a lot of times we do leave our running back in the block because we're facing heavy pressure, but I love that they added this because such a big deal in the NFL now, especially for guys like McCaffrey, Kamara, James White. Those running back choice routes are something that they run so commonly, where they have the choice to, they can cut to the outside, they can cut over the middle, or they can just spot up. Now, the only thing here is it says the AI obviously controls which way they go based on the coverage. Now, for wide receivers, I've always found this to be an issue on the choice or the option routes, but for the running back choice routes that we already had in the game, the running back seemed pretty consistent in doing the right thing. So I'm glad to see this. I think this is a great add. This is just something that's just making it more like real life. This is something elite receiving backs do throughout every game, and I'm glad to see it added to more plays in the game. It says they also adjusted the wide receiver screen plays, such as a jailbreak screen, so you'll notice receivers can immediately get upfield after catching the ball. I didn't actually try any of these in the beta, unfortunately, because I'm just so used to them being so broken and being awful for the last like 10 years that I've never tried running any screen that wasn't a bubble. But I did hear other people say that screenplays were better, that they actually turn up the damn field instead of turning backwards or just standing still for a second. So I'm really happy to hear that. It sounds like they did a lot of work with some of these little things that have just held back gameplay for a while. Happy to hear that. Now, lastly, they talk about the AI controlled, like for the CPU. I'm going to link this blog in the description if you want to read all of this. But basically, they have tuned the AI for the computer versus user games. So this is going to be big for franchise guys. This isn't like an online thing, which I actually think is good. So basically, QBs, first off, clock management wise, like the teams are going to be more aware of time, situation, down, and distance, which is something I've always heard was a problem, right? Like there's something I'm just unaware of the time left in the game and game situation. It says now that has been fixed and they're going to be smarter at handling end of half and end of game situations. Also, the AI controlled quarterbacks are going to mix up their plays and their pass concepts, and they're going to be less predictable and more aggressive. They also tune the QB pass read progressions so that they're more likely to throw to their best receiver in critical situations or when there's not an obvious open receiver. The AI QB can also do a better job of coverage recognition by anticipating receivers coming open, throwing the ball before they cut on certain routes, and the QBs will be more intelligent in making reads for like RPOs and things like that. It also said the adaptive AI is going to kind of kick in for those user quarterbacks. If you're trying to blitz them heavy every play, they're going to be better with their protection. If you know in years past, the AI would always struggle versus things like double A gap mid blitz, for example. They say that that's no more. They're going to be smart at picking up obvious pressure. Also, if you try to call the same defensive coverage over and over and over, the adaptive AI will kick in for the QB. You know, smart guys like Brady, Drew Brees, you know, they're going to start attacking that because they're seeing that same coverage over and over. They're going to know what to do. I think this is great. great for franchise players. You know, for offline guys, computer versus CPU, I think that adds more immersion for you guys and makes it more realistic. I know I've heard you guys complain about that a lot, so that's there, but this isn't going to be for online players. So that's all for today. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you're new, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys next time.